Hi, besties and bosses. How are you doing? Happy Wednesday. A couple minutes late, but intentionally so. You know how I often have the construction and the drilling happening outside the window? I don't know if you can always hear it, but was like, maybe they'll stop today. And it seems like they've stopped. We'll see if it starts up again. But I feel like I actually got the timing right. I'm very excited by that. It is sunny out here in New York City. I don't know the temperature. I haven't been outside yet, actually. So I'm going to go outside after my calls. I've got hip hop class tonight. But I think it's like 40s or 50s, which is funny to me because I moved to South Florida from the UK. I was born in the UK, but I moved there when I was like 7. I grew up there and I lived in California. So I lived in like the sunniest, warmest places. So it cracks me up. I've now lived here 11 and a half years. So like 45, 50 degrees, I feel like is so warm. And I feel like that's such a thing that happens when you live somewhere cold. But I don't think the past me growing up would have ever thought that in Florida and LA, this is when you're like bundled up. So it's all relative. I feel like there's a whole mindset lesson there in terms of perspectives and those sorts of things. Yeah, I'm not gonna digress too much because we've got stuff we want to dig into today, and I know it can be long-winded, and I want to make sure I get into all of this. So we're gonna dive into the 3 strategic shifts my clients are using to 10x industry conversion rates. And let me just, I don't have a ton of notes on this, but I do want to make sure I deliver what I promised for you. This will probably be a little bit more, teaching workshop style. I know sometimes I'm sharing thought leadership and ideas, but this I really want to give you some tangible takeaways that I'm really seeing are working so that you can implement this in your own business. Just for context of where I've been coming from, I think this has always been the case with my clients, but I've just really noticed this recently because there's so much noise about the online space, being oversaturated and people not buying, et cetera, blah, blah, blah. And look, there's an element of truth to that, but I think sometimes we hear that and we think that means we can't get results. And what I've been seeing with my clients is they're getting bigger results than usual. Many of them are blowing the industry norms and benchmarks out of the water. And I say that just to give context for it. That is possible. And it's helpful to know what industry benchmarks are. That's, I think, one of the things I said I was going to talk about today is the numbers you need to know to determine if your marketing's actually working or if it's not working. We'll talk about that a little bit more. But if I look at just the last few months, I've had one of my clients close out their launch with a 10% conversion rate. Industry averages benchmarks are about 1 to 3%. So 10% is massively blowing that out of the water. This was her second launch. Her first time launch, she had over a 10% conversion rate on her first time launch, which is actually kind of like, does it make sense in some ways? I think it does because she's really great at building relationships. But this time she actually raised her rates on the program and still saw that conversion rate. And so I think that's just really interesting to notice, especially when these are all things. I think when we're in business, right, we can worry about, oh my gosh, if I haven't massively grown my audience, because she doesn't have a huge audience. If I don't have a huge audience, if I raise my rates, I'm going to actually lower my conversion rate, and hers stayed the same. The 2 of my clients just create conversion events and their funnels off the back end. So like more of a traditional email funnel, and they have had their highest converting landing pages and email. So landing page show up rate conversion, and then open rates to buying rates in terms of number of sales made. I personally, I'm always mindful because I don't want to give false numbers, but I think my return on ad spend is something stupid like 19 or 22% return on ad spend, give or take there. Don't quote me exactly because I'm like not paying attention to that too closely, but I think averages on that are 4% is considered good. So just use myself as an example. And then I have another client who just increased their discovery call booking rate from their content marketing by 1,400% compared to last year, which has helped them to make 28, 38K months. All of this is because of some really strategic shifts we have been making with their marketing, with their content, with their positioning. So I want to break that down today because these are all clients that I've worked with for a long time and for years. So they've been getting great results all the time, but these are recent results that are based on, like I've been in the trenches with them. So I know exactly the strategic shifts we've made, and I thought that would be helpful to dive into. So we're going to talk about the number one, the numbers you need to know to help determine if your marketing, if your strategy is working or not, so you know what to focus on to boost results. I'm going to talk about the biggest content myth and where the real truth in that lives and what's working to get noticed and to increase those conversion rates so you're getting booked by the right people. We're going to dive into the simplest shift you can make with your marketing and actually give you some just really practical, tangible things that if I was working with you and I was reviewing your email funnel or your landing page, and just really simple shifts that I would be thinking about that I'd probably be giving you notes on. And the 3 types of content that I'm seeing are really helping to kind of tip the scales when we're talking about conversion rates in terms of sales. And if you have questions, throw them at me. Hey, Alyssa. Alyssa says, oh, this is going to be so fun. I hope it's going to be fun. I hope this will be a good one. I feel like this is, I mean, I get obsessed with this stuff. I think it's fun, but you'll have to let me know if you think this is fun or not. Okay, so I alluded to this a little bit. Let's just talk about real briefly the numbers you need to know and why this is important to determine if your strategy is working for you, what to focus on. I have been working with my coach, Lacey Seitz. Shout out to her for, I don't even know, 6-7 years now. One of the things I think she has just drilled in my head and that I'm really focused on with clients is spotting and solving the right problem. I think it is the biggest gift I give my clients as a one-on-one partner in their business. I mean, I give them a lot of gifts, and considering that I'm all in it with them and they have someone who actually wants to be there and they get that undivided personalized support and attention. And I think there's so much noise online and we can hear so much, and it's so easy, even if you're, excuse me about a hair in my eye, even if you're super smart, even if you're super successful, even if you know how to, follow a course module or a template, there are so many places it is easy for us to fall down a rabbit hole and to not either personalize something to our business or not to realize, it's not see the forest for the trees because we're too close to it. I can spot this for clients all day long. I can't necessarily spot it in my own stuff, though I'm probably pretty decent at it because I do this for a living. And I think one of the things that's really helpful for us to be able to spot and identify the right problem, and the reason I say that is I think what happens is a lot of business owners get stuck or spend a lot of money and lose out on a lot of profitability because they're either creating problems in their business, they don't understand the right problem, so they're solving the wrong problem, or they're like pressing too many levers and they don't know what's generating results. And so when we can understand what's working, what's not working, it's easier to know what levers to press to impact results, where to put on the gas, because it's, damaging results are costing you a lot of money. Hopefully that Cliff's Notes version makes sense there. So what I think, this is so basic, y'all, but I just am shocked at how often this changes the game for my clients, is just understanding what some of the industry benchmarks are. Because when you know, and look, this is not to say you need to be average or we're aiming for average. So many of my clients and myself get numbers and metrics that are far beyond and higher than industry benchmarks. And if we don't have a benchmark, it's really tough for us to gauge if something's working or not, especially when you're creating something new, or maybe you have a smaller audience, or there's fewer people going through a funnel. It's really easy if we're also just like in that time gap where we're waiting for more people to go through a funnel or for results to come in, to start pointing to things that are wrong. When I look at things with my clients, so often they're like, well, wait a second, you have a way above industry norm open rate, conversion rate, sales call closing rate. Like, this is all not even normal. This is better than normal. This isn't something we need to address. That means this is working. When we can know that, then what happens is, instead of thinking, oh, because I had an expectation that there was going to be 5 times what I'm currently experiencing, and thinking something's wrong, when we do that, what we do is we go in and tinker with shit that's actually working and we actually break it. And this is how people stay stuck for years in their business. I cannot tell you how many brilliant people have hired me. And one of the biggest things we've done is look at basically the places to stop messing with stuff because it's actually working, how that's just really catapulted their results. I think it's one of the hardest things for us as business owners. I know I love to optimize. I have to sit on my hands sometimes. Like, I have a landing page and a funnel that's converting really well, and I just want to tinker with it, but it is working, and it is far beyond industry averages and conversion rates. There's nothing my coach or me can really do to improve it, and I'm just more likely to break it at this point, right? It's the whole idea, don't break what's not broken, or whatever that saying is. But what this also means is then we can also see if we know, for example, you're hitting at or above industry benchmarks, then we also know, well, wait a second, then there's probably a different problem to solve. I'm just making this up, but let's say your landing page is converting at what we would expect or higher. Your email open rates, your click to book a call, your call conversion rates into a client are at or above what we expect. Then you don't have a problem with that. Then we know the right problem to solve is we just need to get more traffic and put more people through the funnel, right? If all of that isn't working, for example, if we know your landing page conversion rate is super, super low and not what we would expect, but we're getting a ton of traffic, right? You have a huge audience and a ton of traffic. And it's so easy then to think, well, I just need to get more people in my audience. I need to do more reels. I need to spend more money on ads. But actually, your landing page isn't converting the way we would expect. Then we know, don't spend more money on ads. This isn't about making your reels better. This isn't about growing your audience. This is about getting that conversion rate on the landing page. There's something with the messaging, the positioning, the layout. There's something there we need to adjust so we can actually increase that number. So without getting too in the weeds here, yes, we want to know our data and we want to know our metrics in our business, but when we can actually know what is in air quotes normal, what those industry norms and averages are, and where we kind of sit in that, and then taking that a layer deeper, what I really encourage my clients over time to look at is not just what's normal for the industry, but what's normal for them and their audience and their business, because that's really going to also help us to know, are things performing the way we would expect with our audience, with cold traffic, with warm traffic? Is this something that, or is this performing differently? That is going to give you so much information, and it's also going to help you to avoid creating problems, spinning out, telling yourself stories that aren't true. I thinking about the client launch that the 10% conversion rate that I shared, I know that's an example of a client where we were talking about it. I don't think she realized how well I think she had expectations in her mind of like what the numbers in terms of revenue should look like for a second launch, as opposed to the numbers she had in her audience and kind of going through her funnel. And when we were taking a look at things and I was like looking at some of the metrics, I was like, you realize that you're a unicorn and like this is what people are going after. You're crushing it. Like maybe what we need to do is either level set expectations here or put more people through the funnel if you want to increase the number on the back end. But like that's the only problem then to solve. Like there isn't all of these things that maybe your head is telling you. And so again, I don't want to harp on this part too much because there's a lot I want to dig into, but I think that can just be a piece that can really help you, like really help change the game for you in your business. Okay, let's go on and talk about the biggest content myth, or some of the biggest content myths. And I say content because I think obviously, or maybe not, maybe this isn't obvious. I have a few clients, I should say, who don't use content as their main marketing strategy. So when we're saying, I'm really talking overall about marketing today, marketing and sales. So I don't want us to think that content is the only form of marketing. And I know for a lot of us, especially if you're watching this live, content is what we tend to use for our marketing strategy. And I think one of the places I see harm conversion rates are some of the content myths that are floating around, or things that were maybe true in the past that aren't anymore. So I want to bust those, and then we'll just talk about what's working right now, and then we'll talk about the strategic shifts. So I think there's this content myth, and I don't know, I feel like it comes from a really good place and it just got twisted over the years. But it's just this idea that if you just over deliver and give people more value, that will increase your conversion rate. I know, I will throw myself under the bus here. I really think there was a time in my business, and again, I'm mindful here because I do think there was a time, maybe 2020 and before, so like 2018, 2019, 2020, I've been in business for 9 years. I've been doing this for a while, where I think there was an element of just put more stuff out, and that was kind of the strategy. I mean, any of my friends from like 2019, 2020 know, like it was sort of like if you could just pump out more value, that was what converted. And I think there is an element of sort of like under promise, over deliver. I know with my clients, I always want to level set expectations, and then I always aim to over deliver and to surprise and delight in the container, because I would rather that than not level set expectations and under deliver, whatever that would be. So I think there are nuances of truth in this concept, and what I have really, and I've probably talked about this so many times, but I think it's just so important to see or to understand that has changed so much in 2024 and 2025. I really and truly think, yes, you need to give value, but the way we give value looks so different than it used to. I think we hear give value and we think just fire hose people with information. And look, it's not that informational content can't convert, but I think one of the biggest notes I'm giving clients on their content is that we need to bring in a different type of value, and that if your content sounds like it's giving information, that you can look up on ChatGPT. I talked about this a little bit last week with the ChatGPT conversation, or on Google. It's just really going to be tougher content to have you convert. If you want to 10x your conversion rates, information content is not where it's going to be at. And then over delivering, I think can be wonderful. But I think especially when we're looking at marketing, what I have really seen to be true, and again, this is different than it was a couple years ago. I think this is why it's so important to remember business is not static. If I even think about some of the client results I shared, I've been working with them for a long time. Probably some of the things I coached them on in their recent funnels is completely different than I might have coached them a couple of years ago. I know some of the things I work on with my coach, or that I like make changes in my own business, like for my own self-coaching, is so different than what I did a couple of years ago. But when we talk about over delivery, I think we want to be really mindful with over delivering in our marketing if our goal is conversions. I was saying this to one of my clients, actually one of the ones who had, I think, our highest converting conversion event in terms of landing page conversion, signups, I think live show ups, but also sales, like the number that really matters. Sometimes sort of like I almost don't care about the other, but the other numbers are interesting indicators in terms of that revenue, but like really we care about the revenue number, the sales number. But what we were talking about is one of the shifts we made from kind of as we were workshopping and I was coaching her around and I just want to be mindful, so I'm keeping my clients confidential, but I think this would be literally almost any one of my clients. I'll use myself as an example, just to be mindful that one of the changes I've made with my master classes is I still want to give a ton of value, but I know if I over deliver on value and I either overcomplicate or overwhelm or give away so much, and not from this place of trying to hoard things, a couple of things happen. One, I can end up confusing you or overwhelming you where it feels like this is so hard and that's not actually valuable. That makes you feel like this is great information, this is great to hear, but not something I can take and implement. And I think that's just always been the case, but I think as our world gets louder, noisier, look, we are all just living in a very digital world. I think people have, no matter how much we're all tapped into mindfulness and meditation and taking care of ourselves, I think most people who, especially if you're working with business owners or parents, I think most people are just juggling a lot. And so when we're just fire hosing people with information and trying to over deliver, it ends up not being valuable. It ends up being, this is too much for me to go and do anything with. And if our goal is conversions, we have to think what we're also essentially saying is, I just gave you everything to go do before you feel like you have a place or space or time or readiness to hire me, to buy my course, to buy my program. And so what I was saying to this client is something I've just really looked at myself is, what is that happy medium of finding the right kind of value to give our audience that is still really valuable without coming from a place of I need to over deliver, which honestly I think usually comes when it's not from this place of I want to over deliver in a paid container. I think a lot of times it comes from a place of not feeling good enough or wanting to prove our value or thinking people won't get it, insert, et cetera, et cetera. I mean, I know in my case sometimes it's just that I'm really passionate, y'all, and I just want to help everyone. And also, if this is helpful to hear, sometimes I'm not looking for conversions because I don't really have a ton of availability. So I have to say to clients, you want to be mindful of what you're looking at, what other people are doing, because their goals might be very different than yours. My goal is not always a conversion into booking an immediate client. A lot of times my goal with a conversion event, like a master class, is to bring in, nurture more people, to help you get results, and to like long term build relationships for when I do have a spot open up. And so I might over deliver in some cases, knowing that that's okay if I don't get a conversion right away, if that hopefully makes sense. But what I was saying to this client, and something I pay attention to and that I'm really mindful of, is giving more value is not always the thing that creates a client. And we want to be very mindful of the type of value we're giving and how we're helping give the kind of value that creates problem awareness, helps people understand why us, helps people connect the dots to the next step, helps build that know, like, and trust, helps people understand what it is we do and how we can support them, and helps create that gap that we can help close. If we're just trying to close that gap or prove or over deliver, then again, that's generally not going to help increase those conversions. And so what I think this is again just a content myth or a marketing myth, and I think there is an element of truth in it, but we just want to understand that. And what I always remind my clients is we just want to know what the goal of our marketing is. We always want to know the goal in our businesses, but what the goal of our marketing is, down to what is the goal of any single post you're doing, any single live stream you're doing. When we don't know the goal of that, that is when it's really tough, to measure if it's working or not. But that's also when we start getting confused with what kind of content we're creating and if it's even working or not, and our conversions go down. When you know the goal of your content, then you know what type of content to create, then you can easily increase those conversion rates. And so if your goal is conversions, and let's say to book a call, you want to keep that in mind when you're creating your post, your content, your live stream, your masterclass, your webinar, your 3-day challenge or series, if people are still doing those. When your goal is to build relationships for the long term and to nurture, right, you might share something very different. When your goal is to create engagement, you might share something very different. When your goal is to create reach, you might share something very different. So I think, again, that's just one of the biggest content myths. And I think just hearing that, and I just want you to hear, it doesn't mean that we're now not going to give value. It's this, the opposite of this is now under deliver and don't give value. I think it's just noticing what used to be true was that, yes, over deliver, give a lot of information, and information was the value. But information is not a commodity anymore because we can get it anywhere and everywhere. Our market has shifted. It's not that information isn't important. It's just that it no longer, this is like economics 101, but when we have a limited supply of something, there is more value, right? When we can't get a lot of diamonds, it's why they like lock, what is it? They lock up a whole ton of diamonds and don't release them so that they're more expensive and valuable, right? They have more perceived value. If we could get diamonds everywhere on every corner, and they were readily available, the price on them would go down. They would be considered less rare and less valuable. Information used to be less rare, it used to be a harder commodity to get. Now it is the most common commodity, so it is just no longer valuable. So this whole idea of just kind of like fire hosing people and just like over deliver with more information is not the thing that's going to be as valuable. Creating problem awareness, creating an aha, sharing your personal experience, helping to share the application of information. Instead of over delivering and overwhelming, helping to simplify things, right? To streamline things, to synthesize information, to say, hey, you've just gotten all of this information. I've been doing this for 9 years. I can tell you the 5 things that actually matter, or the 3 things that actually matter, or the 1 thing to focus on. That is super valuable. And then you don't have to like give more and more and more, right? You're making it simpler, 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 easier, easier, easier. Then someone can take that, actually get a result from that, or understand the gap in what they're missing and why to hire you. Let me know if that makes sense or if you have a question. Otherwise, I'm going to go on to the next piece because there's one more myth I want to bust, actually. I was talking about this with a client yesterday, and I think this is also a myth I used to believe. And I think this is just great. I was just pausing, so I was thinking how I want to frame this. I think this is just great evidence of how we get to learn and see new things through our businesses over years, and we get to change our mind, we get to change our opinion. But I think this is really something I believed so wholeheartedly, is that it needs to take a long time for someone to hire you, even though I had evidence that wasn't the case. I just thought kind of like generally that